Let me begin by wishing everyone a happy and better New Year 2021. Thank you, Bishop Cacanio, for your gracious invitation to participate in our Western Jurisdiction College of Bishops Where Love Lives campaign. Initiated in October 2020, we are now into the 5th month of the campaign to bear witness to the fully inclusive church that we continue to strive to be. As United Methodists, we share a deep commitment to our Wesleyan roots. And as a part of our United Methodist tradition and witness, our focus on this month is on the inseparability of personal piety and social holiness. We worship a God incarnate in the person of Jesus Christ. We engage in spiritual practices as expressions of our personal piety in relationship with the divine. For example, in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, where we find the Lord's Prayer, Jesus discusses 3 spiritual disciplines as acts of personal piety: charitable giving, prayer, and fasting, practices that are characteristically Jewish forms of piety. Surely there are other spiritual practices that have become an important part of our Christian tradition, including meditation, fellowship, and study. As United Methodists, we know that personal piety is only one side of our Wesleyan faith and beliefs. In a YouTube episode to discuss United Methodist beliefs, the Reverend Susan Henry Crow, Secretary of the Board of Church and Society, reminds us with these words, quote, "Social holiness is unique to Methodism. United Methodists have a long commitment to social holiness. It is in our DNA. It is part of who we are. Wesley has said, there is no religion that is not social, no holiness that is not social." End of quote. Social holiness is about loving and caring for others. It is about living in the reality of God's entire creation, that there are other human beings, living organisms, and the rest of God's created world that we are a part of. It is about coming to grips with Jesus' great commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So it is not just about loving God, but loving and caring for others that is critical for Christian faith. Indeed, for John Wesley, genuine faith is not merely a personal matter. It must have a social dimension. When Wesley accepted George Whitefield's invitation and encouragement to go to the Bristol area to preach in the open fields, Wesley soon discovered the paucity of educational opportunities for the poor, the children of coal miners he was preaching to. Hence, he founded the Kingswood Academy in 1748. For Wesley, personal piety and social holiness are inseparable. Wesley's understanding of the inseparability of personal piety and social holiness is grounded in the biblical tradition. Micah chapter 6, verses 6 to 8 is one of those biblical texts that many of us are very familiar with. Micah was an 8th century prophet in Judah. As worshippers of the God Yahweh, Judah had no shortage of religious people. Micah, in fact, describes widespread religiosity where people, especially religious leaders, are making a public show of their personal piety through their offerings and sacrifices. They seem to be asking, "What is it, O God, that you want from us? What do you require? Just tell us your favorite offering, and we will surely sacrifice it, even if it is a rather extreme request. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? For Micah, personal piety is insufficient. Micah reminds the people that their religiosity is missing a social component, social holiness, if you will, that God is seeking. He has told you, O mortal, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. God's expectation strikes at the heart of what it means to be a godly person, a person in right relationship with God, a person after God's own heart, a person for whom personal piety and social holiness are inseparable. I'm often reminded of the words of the famous theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was killed by Hitler and the Nazis. Quote, "The church is the church only when it exists for others." Bonhoeffer understood what Micah and Jesus taught. That is, as individuals and as a community of faith, our God-given lives are meant to be lived for others. We help the less fortunate. We pray and we fast as a way to walk humbly with God in living out our faith. In addition to practicing our spiritual disciplines, living a life of faith also means that we need to be constantly aware that we do not think of ourselves as more important than others. It means learning to respect and love others, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, sexual identity, and economic class. It is a call to a deep commitment to be a Big Tent church, a fully inclusive church where all people are welcome as beloved people of God and share equally in the ministry and leadership of our church. Blessings to everyone as we work together to build God's church together.